Hello and welcome back to the No Ratings Pod. It's that time again on a Sunday evening. You're getting a coffee, you're putting the kids to bed, or if you don't have any kids, you're just putting yourself to bed early. But you listen to the insight before you go to bed, and that's the key detail. Because me and Pythag are back, massive game, Liverpool City, 11 points the distance. We're going to talk about the tactical and the psychological elements of this game. I'm going to come to you first, bro. What were your thoughts on this game generally?
I think it confirms that Pep Guardiola wants to jump off a bridge from a tactical point of view. I think he's fully lost the plot. Needs to be put in a psychiatric ward for tacticals. That doesn't mean that Pep Guardiola has always been bad tactically. It's just like his players, he seems to have jumped the shark. He's lacking the hunger to make
Mm,
the sharp decisions that are needed from a tactical point of view. You look at Mateus Nunes on the left wing. I don't understand what he's trying to achieve by putting a centre mid there when you've got Trent as your opposition. Surely you'd want a more vertical type wing forward who's going to really exploit that space. He didn't. On the opposite side, you've got Rico Lewis and Kyle Walker almost as a double fullback system. Again, neither of them overlap. So where's the width coming from?
mm.
And even then, like Gakpo is still drifting over to that side and wreaking havoc. So not really sure what he was trying to do. The midfield once again was an absolute shambolic mess with Bernardo Silva as his CDM. Like, yeah, I get Rodri's missing, but dude, you can do so much more in terms of putting some defensive minded players in there. He's completely given up in terms of having a cohesive off the ball structure, but even the on the ball structure doesn't make any sense either.
I think let's start with City because I think a lot of people will talk a lot about Slot, and we're definitely going to talk about Slot. But from what you just said initially, probably 6 weeks ago, there was two or three areas that we were going. If they improve this, this might happen. Now we're like 7 games later, where they're losing games, dropping points, dropping leads. I think psychologically, that's a point I definitely want to talk about in a second. But you talked about that midfield: Bernardo, Gundo, Rico. They were once again, like they were against Tottenham, bullied, outrun, and then outclassed generally, outplayed. But there was moments where I saw Gundogan pick the ball up, and I love Gundogan. But by the time he picked his head up, Gravenberg had taken it off him. Same for Bernardo, same for Rico. Now, I agree with you that I think there's a mental crash here, that the players have crashed, and so has Guardiola tactically. But I also do think in a game against Liverpool at Anfield, what could he have done to change the landscape?
Well, I think he could have realized that his team is very much in a downwards spiral. I think he could have tried to put more defensively minded players into the midfield. So, for example, I know Guardiola has struggled at left back, but why not play him as one of the centre back pair and then move
Mm,
one of the centre backs into the midfield and make them the six? So then you could have a free man centre back off the ball, like
mm,
or when your team's in structure. Then imagine you've got Guardiola as the central centre back, and you've got Akanji and Diaz supporting, and then even if an Ake is then told to sit as well, you've got like a four-man defensive unit there that's just going to
mm,
sit, and then you're away from home. You're going to make it really tough for the opposition. Whereas Liverpool were absolutely flying in that first 15 minutes.
yeah.
They could have been 4-0 up in 20 minutes. That's what it felt like. So clearly, you've gone there with zero game plan in terms of trying to keep it tight, have some hunger, have some discipline. There was no resilience shown.
Can I just pick your brains on this? It was mentioned a lot about system changes, and I think on one end we're obviously not going to give City any sympathy because they're a rich club who've bought loads of players. On the other end, I think this is a longer term conversation. We're not going to tackle it now, but they've bought poorly, and now they've found themselves in a position where your substitute bench is Doku, Grealish, and Savinho. And in a scenario like today, a lot of people were saying, commentators were saying as well, get them guys on; they can win you the game. If you're structurally a mess in central areas, you will not win football matches. Full stop. I don't care who you've got out wide. Um, and so therefore I look at this and I go, what could he have possibly changed formation? That was the thing I was thinking the whole game. What if he picked it? What if he played a back three, for example, with two wing backs? So you avoid Kyle Walker getting caught out for the Gakpo goal because he won't be there. The problem on the left wing back side is who do you play there? I would probably just chuck Gavardiol in there, or maybe keep Ake as a left wing. I think Ake is a good centre back, to be honest. But what could he have done?
Well, I think, you speak about system. System is one thing, and I think we touched upon it in my last answer, but he's got a real issue with personnel. Like some of his personnel selections, they're just not making any sense. Like I
Mm.
said, coming back to the wing situation, Mateus Nunes as a winger, Bernardo Silva as a CDM, like Rico Lewis as
I
a
would just switch them two over. That feels like it's like not rocket science
This
to
is
be
what
like
I
switch
mean.
them two
He's
over.
not thinking clearly at all. Like he's completely and utterly lost the plot. It's like, okay, shapes out of the window, but so's the personnel aspect.
Yeah.
So as a coach, the first thing you need to get right is personnel. So even if you're not a tactically top end person, your first thing needs to be like knowing which players can play where. So
Mm,
imagine you're a bog standard. I know 4-4-2. That's all I know. As long as you put that 4-4-2 out there on the pitch with the right players in the right position, you're going to at least be competitive to a degree. Then you can start working on what your formations are to even more maximize the potential of these players. He's not even getting the personnel right, so let alone getting to the tactical part. So that's the first thing he needs to fix. For example, Kyle Walker. How the hell is this guy starting every game?
yeah,
Like, it
yeah.
makes no sense.
Yeah, I think the walk situation we spoke about it at length last
Yeah,
week. If you
we
didn't
don't
listen
need
to
to
that
go
episode,
to
go
again.
listen
Yeah,
to it. But I thought that first goal, actually, to be fair, both goals were just a real symbol of where they're at as a team. It was messy, it was clunky. The second goal of Kanji, why are you heading it to Diaz in that situation? I'm a Liverpool fan, so I'm watching it smiling, but I was just thinking, this is bizarre. Then Ruben Diaz, as he picks the ball up, he has to know Darwin Nunez is fresh and he's just come off the bench. It's almost as if, and I do think that footballers are very robotic and they listen to whatever the gaffer says. And I think you start to think like your manager. Imagine your manager in this scenario is your dad, and everything he tells you is gospel, and you take it as gospel. So when he goes mad, you go mad. Do you
yeah,
know what I mean? Like,
100%. That's
and I
such a
felt
good
like those
analogy.
two.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think those two things are happening for City at the moment, where
yeah,
like there was a moment, obviously Guardiola just a six symbol to Liverpool fans, a little bit rattled, fine. But then Bernardo Silva, don't know if you remember this, towards the end of the game, they're doing Olays. He loses his rag, wins it back in the corner, then back heels it to Kyle Walker, and Walker loses it, and Curtis Jones gets a shot on goal. At that point, I was thinking, that right there is everything you guys used to do well, gone the opposite way. Like
yeah,
in that position, you win the ball back, you lump it down the line and clear your lines basically because you've played shocking. You've decided to backheel it to show off a little bit of arrogance because you're also now rattled.
yeah,
I think that mental switch has switched, and I don't know how it can happen so quickly.
yeah.
Um, I think we should also talk about on the flip side, Liverpool taking advantage of that. Like Salah's, you want to talk about Salah, so I'll throw it to you.
I just think Salah's pass was just majestic, and I saw some people try and claim that he didn't mean it, which was ridiculous. Like it's like they're always looking to downplay what Salah does. I just don't understand it. I just really like the way he put the disguise on the pass, and it was
Mm,
literally through eye of a needle stuff. Like it was such a difficult pass to execute. The margin for error was very very small. I think again from a dribbling point of view, I don't think he had a magnificent game from a dribbling point of view, or even from a finishing point of view. I think he was wasteful.
mm.
But that one pass it just changed the game.
It wins you a game.
Yeah,
Yeah. I think on the Salah point as well, stuff that maybe football fans don't look at, which is kind of our job to look at, is um, when Liverpool gets stuck in a scenario, Kelleher will just lump it long to Salah.
yeah.
And so there's certain situations that Salah is so effective at now outside of output, where if Liverpool are stuck, you can give him a diag and he'll wrestle a defender to gain you yards, like they say in rugby.
Hi-
Um,
His hold
and
up play is
it's,
on another level. Like he's
yeah,
so physically strong. And it's
yeah.
funny you mentioned the hold up play because I was literally like not going to mention that because I'd completely forgotten. But during the game, I don't know if you remember after you guys had that 20-minute spell of domination, there was
Mm,
this little sort of 10 to 15 minute spell where City were just in and around your box, actually keeping the ball a little bit. And out of nowhere, it was like one goal kick to Salah, which he just about wrestled and kept it in. I was like, bloody hell, this is the first time where Liverpool have got back into grasping the momentum of the game. And I think after that moment, you guys were pretty much settled. But yeah, it shows that he's the player that you look to when the chips are down a little bit, even mid game.
I think also that like there's the hold up play, but then there's also the goal that Liverpool eventually score. He's so good at finding positions that most wingers in the world just dial out of.
Hmm.
And I think he mentioned this in his last interview, saying like he got advice from Wenger, I think, that even if you're having a bad game, you can still be in the game or something like that. And I think that goal was so true to that because he basically picks up a position that means a Kanji has a big problem and it means there's an enormous gap between midfield and defence. And a lot of wingers normally will just go to the byline or they will come deeper to receive the ball. And I think he's began or maybe even had this understanding for a while that he is now not just an output machine, but in possession, he's just an output output to get to, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Um,
it's funny you mentioned this because I think if we compare him to Mbappe, Mbappe at his best should mirror a Mo Salah from a
mm,
tactical profile. And where Mo Salah is not shy to constantly make these runs in behind, get in front of goal. And yeah, at times he might look stupid. For example, that chance he missed, but then he goes and makes up for it with the penalty. So he's
mm.
constantly putting himself in the firing line. Like, look, I'm going to make these runs. I'm going to get myself in the big moments. Whereas Mbappe almost feels like he's almost afraid to get in these big moments because he keeps dropping deep and wanting it to feet. And the thing is, when you get things to feet, everything's in your control, but at the
Mm.
same time, you're allowing the opposition to be in control of you. Whereas if you're running in behind, you're taking the opposition out of the picture and you're putting yourself in the limelight. Now, as a confident player, you'd want that, and you'd want to almost bypass all of that and get straight in on goal, which is what Mbappe should be doing. But at the moment, he's almost shy of getting in front of goal and potentially missing, and then getting all these fans on his back again. Whereas Salah, he's too experienced for that. He doesn't care.
That's a really interesting way to think about. I didn't even think about that, to be fair, in terms of like the psychological aspect of players dropping into receiver, because obviously the perception, I think, especially in England, is say like when Palmer drops in, they're like he wants to take control of the game, but there is the flip side of that.
Yeah,
Like you just said there, some players want to come to get the ball so they can control the destiny, basically. Whereas Salah almost goes like, I'll give the destiny to the player in possession, but then when it comes to me, I now control the narrative.
yeah.
Um, fascinating player. I did also want to talk about Slot, and I don't know if you agree, but I've been dying to say this because I've obviously watched Liverpool under Jurgen Klopp and thought Liverpool were helter skelter, and I've been criticised before for saying I think Klopp's the best competitor, but not the best champion. And I think the very little 20 game sample size I've seen of Slot is there's things that he does in games that I don't think some other top managers do because he understands the momentum and the game state better than a lot of managers. So in today's scenario, he starts a Boschlei. Fans are furious about Curtis Jones. So Boschlei was a great pick for today's game because he literally said, on a non-tactical basic level, I need legs in midfield, and there's no one who can stretch the pitch like him. There's no one who can travel from right to left as quick as he can, so he's a no-brainer. He then decided to bring Robertson inside to deal with Rico Lewis, took the gamble of dealing with Walker on the outside, knowing Walker's delivery is poor, worked again. He then brings on Darwin Nunez, recognizing that City's defense is starting to switch off a little bit, and Darwin is a nutter and he'll press everything going. But my favourite tinker was Luis Diaz through the middle and Gakpo on the left because Gakpo is so good at running off the right back. And that's where the goal comes from.
Yeah.
Obviously, Salah's pass makes the run for Gakpo, it makes the decision up for Gakpo. But Arne Slot was so acutely aware that Walker always defends side on and Gakpo always runs diagonally in. There's so many goals that he scored for Netherlands where he scrambles it over the line. That's his favourite run. And then putting Diaz through the middle because he knows he's going to drop off. He's not going to occupy the defenders. City's defenders' biggest problem at the moment is they just switch off constantly. And if you've got like this half a nine dropping off, you don't know what you're doing. I thought, in my opinion, it was a very, very good tactical day for Slot.
100%. And what's surprising is that I don't know if you know Amon Football, Arsenal fan. He
Yeah.
he said that Arnie slots out of his depth tactically, and it didn't make any sense to me. I don't see how you could say that Arnie Slot hasn't been the most impressive tactical manager in the league this season. I think one of the closest managers to him would probably be a Maresca based on his squad, but I
Mm,
still don't think he comes close to the in-game tweaks that Slot's made time and time again. And another thing that was interesting was that this shows how versatile Slot is. Most of the time, we've spoken about how in the second half he looks to up the intensity, but in this game, Liverpool started with almost the intensity of a club side. They really went hell for
mm.
leather for the first 15 minutes, and they could have been rewarded by 2 to 3 goals. So he's shown an ability that even pre-game, if he thinks that there's an opponent there for the taking, he will take the initiative.
Yeah, and I think also it's fascinating. We've spoken about it so much, but in the second half, he almost dialed the switch down, didn't he?
Yeah.
He said like, "We're going to sit in, we're going to soak up, we're going to suffer because we know they're going to make mistakes and we're going to pounce." And that's where Salah's chance comes from. And eventually, Liverpool get the penalty and get the win. Slightly risky against a team like City, but he evidently trusts his backline, and I think that builds psychologically builds a lot of momentum. I think you start to feel invincible when the best team in the land or one of the best teams in the land comes down and they can't get a shot on goal when you're sitting in. I think like the team collectively almost looks around and goes, actually, you know what? Like we're pretty tough to beat. Anyway, that's all we have time for. Hopefully, I was just going to very quickly mention City's mental state. I think City are going through this period where the moment they concede, they capitulate. And for mentality monsters, I think that speaks to what I was saying earlier about the managers having a moment, and that's now going into the team because they're just constantly having breakdowns. I think in the last 7 games that they've not won in, they've also led in 3 and gone on to lose those games or drawn those games. So I think there's a mental shift happening, and I'm curious to see how they turn it around. I don't think like it could just be they go in January, buy 2 or 3 players, and that does something to get them along. But I think this might be a long reset until the end of the season. But I'm sure we'll talk about City plenty more times. Pythag, bro, good to chat to you as always. For you guys, if you're listening, potentially watching this, may go on YouTube. As we were talking, I was like, I could get this out on YouTube. If it does go on YouTube, then make sure you drop a like and comment. And if you're listening, then make sure you support the pod. We'll see you on the next one.